everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be reviewing 6 different books that I've just added to my collection. As you guys can probably tell from the shelf behind me, I am quite the avid reader. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite pastimes. Unfortunately, about 6 weeks ago, I actually got laid off from my job due to financial troubles and company restructuring. And while I've been looking for new job opportunities, as you can probably imagine, I've had a lot more time on my hands. And in that time, I've made a concerted effort to read more. So, that's what I'll be doing. The first book that I will be talking about today is called 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗧 by David Whyte, reimagining work, self, and relationship. Now, this is really a book that is about, well, more or less work-life balance, but it's basically talking about the tie between work, self, spirituality, and relationships, and how we balance those 3 pillars of our life and the importance that we put on each of those. Something that I think that I've struggled with, honestly, especially over the past couple of years, but really my entire life, is I think just having too much of my value tied up in my work and what I do for a living, as opposed to also who I am, who my friends are, and who I spend my time with. So, let's read the description here. In 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗪𝗧, best-selling author, poet, and speaker David Whyte asks us to think about our work, relationships, and inner selves in a radically different way by drawing them into a mutually supportive conversation. According to Whyte, our vows to a significant other, to our work, and to our constantly evolving self demand larger and renewed dedication as the years go by. Whyte's thesis is that to separate these marriages in order to balance them is to destroy the fabric of happiness itself, that in each of these marriages, will, effort, and hard work are overused, overrated, and in many ways self-defeating. Happiness, Whyte says, is possible, but only if we reimagine how we inhabit the worlds of love, work, and self-understanding. Book number 2, How to Know a Person by David Brooks. The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. He's also the best-selling author of The Road to Character. I'm not familiar with that book. This is basically a book about being empathetic and really understanding other people on a very deep level. Kind of funny because we're reading a book and there's that common phrase, don't judge a book by its cover, but it's kind of like doing the same thing but for a person. Really cool cover too. I love that cover. It's very kind of like abstract but also very artsy. Let's see what they say about this one. As #1 New York Times best-selling author David Brooks observes, there is one skill that lies at the heart of any healthy person, family, school, community organization, or society: the ability to see someone else deeply and make them feel seen, to accurately know another person, to let them feel valued, heard, and understood. And yet, we humans don't do this well. All around us are people who feel invisible, unseen, misunderstood. In How to Know a Person, Brooks sets out to help us do better, posing questions that are essential for all of us. If you want to know a person, what kind of attention should you cast on them? What kind of conversations should you have? What parts of a person's story should you pay attention to? The act of seeing another person, Brooks argues, is profoundly creative. How can we look somebody in the eye and see something large in them, and in turn, see something larger in ourselves? How to Know a Person is for anyone searching for connection and yearning to be understood. I'm excited to read this one too. Book number 3, This one is a classic, and a lot of you guys may have heard of this one. It's Unbroken by 𝗬𝗧 𝗦𝘁𝗺𝗀, a World War II story of survival, resilience, and redemption. This is a true story, autobiography, and the basic thesis is it's a story about a famous Olympic runner who ended up being a World War II bomber and survived a plane crash. New York Times says, a 1 in a billion story designed to wrench from self-respecting critics all the blurby adjectives we normally try to avoid. It is amazing, unforgettable, gripping, harrowing, chilling, and inspiring. The thesis, in the author's words: in boyhood, 𝗬𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗺 was an incorrigible delinquent. As a teenager, he channeled his defiance into running, discovering a prodigious talent that carried him to the Berlin Olympics. But when World War II began, the athlete became an airman, embarking on a journey that led to a doomed flight on a May afternoon in 1943. When his Army Air Force's bomber crashed into the Pacific Ocean, against all odds, 𝗵𝗵𝗺 survived, adrift on a foundering life raft. Ahead of 𝗵𝗵𝗺 lay thousands of miles of open ocean, leaping sharks, thirst and starvation, enemy aircraft, and, beyond, a trial even greater. Driven to the limits of endurance, 𝗵𝗵𝗺 would answer desperation with ingenuity, suffering with hope, resolve and humor, brutality with rebellion. His fate, whether triumph or tragedy, would be suspended on the fraying wire of his will. Appearing in paperback for the first time with 20 arresting new photos and an extensive Q&A with the author, Unbroken is an unforgettable testament to the resilience of the human mind, body, and spirit. Brought vividly to life by 𝗬𝗵𝗺, author 𝗬𝗧 𝗵𝗺𝗺. Great to read books like this to get perspective on life, especially when there's so few World War II survivors left. Book number 4, another World War II related book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. I believe this is actually told in the first person, and this is about a Holocaust survivor who basically explains the importance of having meaning in life to avoid nihilism, especially during really, really terrible atrocities. Can't really have a better perspective than that from someone who survived the Holocaust. You know, I think if someone who is a Holocaust survivor can find meaning in life, then any of us can. Viktor E. Frankl. More than 15 million copies in print worldwide. One of the great books of our time, Harold S. Kushner, author of When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Man's Search for Meaning has riveted generations of readers with its descriptions of life in Nazi death camps and its lessons for spiritual survival. Between 1942 and 1945, psychiatrist Viktor Frankl labored in 4 different camps, including Auschwitz, while his parents, brother, and pregnant wife perished. Based on his own experience and the stories of his many patients, Frankl argues that we cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose how to cope with it, find meaning in it, and move forward with renewed purpose. Frankl's theory, known as logotherapy, from the Greek word logos, meaning, holds that our primary drive in life is not pleasure, as Freud maintained, but the discovery and pursuit of what we personally find meaningful. In the decades since its first publication, Man's Search for Meaning has become one of the most influential books in America. It continues to inspire us all to find significance in the very act of living. Pretty powerful stuff. Pretty short looking read too, only about 150 pages. Maybe I'll actually do this one first. 2 more to go. Book number 5, Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ranks among the great adventure books of all time, said by the Wall Street Journal, and a #1 national bestseller. This is a book about climbing Mount Everest and someone's personal account of it and the dangers surrounding that pursuit. a personal account of the Mount Everest disaster. I'm a mountain climber myself. I live in Washington State, and I've climbed Mount Rainier, which is the tallest mountain on the West Coast. Not the tallest in the Pacific Northwest. That would be Denali, but the tallest on I would say the Western West Coast. It's about 14,400 feet, so I love mountaineering stories. People magazine described this book to be a harrowing tale of the perils of high-altitude climbing, a story of bad luck and worse judgment, and of heartbreaking heroism. The author's description is as such. Reeling from the brain-altering effects of oxygen depletion, Jon Krakauer reached the summit of Mount Everest in the early afternoon of May 10th, 1996. He hadn't slept in 57 hours. As he turned to begin the perilous descent from 29,028 feet, roughly the cruising altitude of an Airbus jetliner, 20 other climbers were still pushing doggedly to the top, unaware that the sky had begun to roil with clouds. This is the terrifying story of what really happened that fateful day at the top of the world during what would be the deadliest season in the history of Everest. In this harrowing yet breathtaking narrative, Krakauer takes the reader along with his ill-fated expedition, step by precarious step, from Kathmandu to the mountain's pinnacle where, plagued by a combination of hubris, greed, poor judgment, and plain bad luck, they would fall prey to the mountain's unpredictable fury. With more than 3 million copies in print in all editions, this sensational book virtually defines excellence in the genre of narrative nonfiction. Brilliantly written and supported by unimpeachable reporting into thin air, will by turns thrill and terrify. This sounds like a really good one too. Now on to the final book. And looks like the shortest one too. Loose. On Letting Stuff Go. Collected works of 𝗧𝗶𝗺. Probably German. I probably messed up that pronunciation. But I think this is basically just about kind of meditative living, letting things go and not letting your mind plague you with things. Something that I really need to work on. I've actually tried meditating a lot throughout my life, and there's been a couple times where I've gotten into a really good headspace, but it's very, very hard. Really hard for me, especially given how crowded my mind is. But let's see what the author's description of this book is. A wise Buddhist monk once explained the power of letting go through the act of holding a cup of tea. Holding the cup for a few seconds doesn't take much effort, but after minutes, serious discomfort sets in, which, an hour later, has turned into unbearable agony. Only by putting the cup down, we release ourselves from the pain. Holding on to stuff can be painful, yet many people are masters of holding on tightly to things like people's opinions, grudges, ex-lovers' material possessions, bad memories, and worries about the future. Through a persistent, uninterrupted clinging to all this stuff, our lives become heavier and more unpleasant by the day. But if we let go of stuff, even if it's just temporarily, we'll experience relief. In today's world, letting go is an act of rebellion. By putting the cup down, we revolt against a society obsessed with accomplishment and prestige, that celebrates toxic, passionate love and unhealthy attachment, and favors greed over contentment. Loose is a collection of re-edited and revised essays on various topics, originally published in video format on the 𝗧𝗶𝗺 YouTube channel. These short works explore the art of letting go, inspired by different schools of thought, from Schopenhauer's philosophy to Diogenes' Taoism. I probably botched some of the pronunciation there. I'm reading on the spot. So this one seems pretty interesting too. So, there you have it. Those are the 6 books I will be reading over the next couple of weeks, or honestly, next couple of months, more realistically. If you guys have any book recommendations, please let me know in the comments. Or if you guys have read any of the books that I talked about today, let me know what you found interesting about them in the comments. No spoilers though, please. Anyways, That's all I have for you today. Until next time.